What is up everyone, Boshi here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we're going to look at the skill sets for the new Doom Tower bosses. Let's jump into it. Alright guys, so this morning we got some info on the skill sets for the new Doom Tower bosses that are coming out in next rotation. Now next rotation will be starting in about a week, so this gives you a little bit of a head start in order to level whatever champions you are thinking about using for these encounters. Now I do want to mention that Raid did say that they're going to come out with their own video tomorrow going over these bosses and also giving you guys some tips on how to beat them, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the very first boss, Bommel the Dreadhorn. Alright guys, so the very first boss that we're going to look at is Bommel the Dreadhorn. So on the A1 we have Ruinous Crush, attacks all enemies, decreasing bomb debuff detonation countdowns by 1 turn, and then also instantly activates any HP burn debuffs on each target and decreases the duration of those debuffs by 1 turn. So it looks like the main debuffs we'll be dealing with in this fight are going to be bomb debuffs and HP burn debuffs, which is a perfect combination for a mechanic just because the HP burn will get your champions lower while the bombs should be finishing you off. Now do remember that bombs do ignore defense value, so bringing in increased defense for the bomb debuff itself is definitely not going to be really valuable or anything, but it could possibly be valuable to bring in increased defense depending on how hard this boss hits, so definitely keep that in mind. On the A2 we have Magma Flood, attack all enemies, places an HP burn debuff on each enemy for 3 turns, and it also has a passive effect of enemies receive 100% more damage from HP burn debuffs for each bomb debuff they are under. So you're definitely going to be taking a lot of damage from the HP burn debuff, especially if this boss is going to be placing a lot of bomb debuffs. Hopefully you will be able to cleanse, but we'll have to see about that, and this ability is going to be on a 3-turn cooldown, so possibly keeping up HP burn majority of the fight. On the A3 we have Rain of Bombs, removes all buffs from all enemies, then attacks them, places a bomb debuff on each enemy that detonates after 2 turns, and then places 1 additional bomb debuff for each buff removed by this skill. The bomb debuffs cannot be blocked or removed. So that goes cleansing the bombs out the window, but with this ability he is at least going to be placing 1 bomb from the initial usage of this ability, and then can possibly do additional bombs depending on how many buffs are removed by the skill. Now it doesn't say you cannot resist the removal of these buffs, so it is possible that you might want to do a resist team in order to prevent the buffs from being removed, so that way he can't add additional bombs. But that depends on the situation, right? If it's going to be more of a speed fight, it might not be worth building a resist team for this. But yeah, so definitely want to prevent from using as many buffs as you can just to prevent the additional bombs from being placed. And this is also going to be on a 3-turn cooldown. So on the A4 we have Dread Minions, places a 50% increased attack buff on Bommel the Dreadhorn for 5 turns, then summons 2 Dread Bombs and grants an extra turn. We'll go ahead and look at the Dread Bombs in just a second. The increased attack buff cannot be removed, and then also has a passive effect of summons 1 Dread Bomb every time Bommel's turn meter is decreased. So you're definitely not going to be looking at using any type of decreased turn meter because you're probably going to be overrun by Dread Bombs at that point, so definitely look at not using any type of turn meter control. And also think about Evil Eye, right? If any of your champions have Evil Eye, at one point in time during the fight they are going to end up triggering an additional Dread Bomb summon, so definitely keep that in mind when you're building any type of new champions for this fight. The next pass, or his last ability, is a passive, which is the A5 Pressure Wave. Each time an enemy places any debuff except bomb debuffs on Bommel, places a bomb debuff on that enemy that detonates after 2 turns. These bomb debuffs cannot be blocked or removed. Each time a bomb debuff detonates on an enemy has a 100% chance of placing a stun debuff on all other enemies for 1 turn, and Bommel receives 200% more damage from bomb debuffs. So right off the bat, from his passive, pretty much tells you everything about this fight, right? You're definitely going to be wanting to use bomb champions because they are going to do significantly more damage against Bommel compared to everyone else. You also do not want to be placing any type of other debuff beyond bomb debuffs. Now you can, but do remember you cannot be you can't cleanse the bomb debuffs that are being placed by Bommel, only pretty much the HP burns. So definitely keep that in mind. Now if you have the healing capabilities or the damage reduction capabilities from like maybe a Rector or maybe a Duchess. Those can definitely come in handy, but overall you're going to want to avoid getting those additional bomb debuffs. Now, each time a bomb debuff detonates on an enemy has a 100% chance to place a stun. This does not mean you cannot prevent this. It looks like you'll be able to obviously resist it, but block debuffs may come in handy when it comes to this portion of the fight, to prevent the stun and even the HP burn from the A2. So definitely look at using a block debuffs right there for that ability. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the Dread Bomb minions. So the Dread Bomb minions have two passive effects. On the A1, its detonation explodes at the start of each turn and deals pure damage to each enemy equal to 40% of their max HP. If the Dread Bomb is not under a freeze debuff at the start of the turn, deals pure damage to each enemy equal to 20% of their max HP instead if the Dread Bomb is under a freeze debuff at the start of the turn, and damage inflicted will ignore shield debuffs. So shield debuffs are not going to come in handy when dealing with the Dread Bombs, but you will want to bring a freeze champion in order to reduce the overall damage from the detonation ability. And then the second passive is going to be Short Fuse. The Dread Bomb is immune to all debuffs, effects, and sources of damage except its own skills and freeze and or HP burn debuffs, but fills the Dread Bomb's turn meter by 20% even every time it receives damage from an HP burn debuff. Now, depending on the amount of damage or the amount of health a Dread Bomb has, you might be able to deal enough damage with HP burn debuffs to kill it before it detonates. Now, in my head, I'm thinking, it might just be better to freeze the bomb or the Dread Bombs in order to take the reduced damage and not worry about trying to kill them with an HP burn debuff, because you could possibly make it go off quicker. But with this in mind, right, it depends on when you are able to land the HP burn, because if you can land it early enough when the Dread Bombs are maybe dropped, then you might be able to kill it in time before it detonates. Just depends on the situation. I think that's why they're referring to perfect timing and stuff like that in the video that they initially released. But that is that. So overall, guys, the bomb champion, like, this is going to take some bomb champions along with some freeze champions and maybe even a cleanser here or there, or a block debuffs. You can interchange those two. Alright guys, so it does look like bomb champions are going to shine on this specific fight. Now, when looking at different bomb champions to use, you can look toward things like Galcut or Soul Drinker, just because they are decent damage dealers along with having the additional effect of adding a bomb onto the boss. Now, if you happen to pull a Lord Shazar or even an Astrolith, as weird as that is to say, they both, Lord Shazar and Astrolith, can add 2 bombs at a time, which could deal significant damage depending on the HP of this boss. So definitely look at them if they are guarding your vault for whatever reason. Now, unfortunately, War Mother did fall short as she is a magic based champion, and from what's next in raid video, it did look like Bommel was going to be a force affinity champion. So you definitely don't want to use a magic champion in that scenario, especially since War Mother depends on getting crits in order to detonate those bombs. So unfortunately, she does fall short once again. The last one I want to mention is Grunch Killjoy. So Grunch I did mention previously when we initially heard about these bosses, just because he does add 1 bomb using his A2, but he also does have a cleanse on his A3, which can be quite useful. And specifically now that we know this skill set, he can be used to remove that HP burn and add a continuous heal to recover a little bit of damage. Now, unfortunately, they do have the ability to remove buffs and place additional bombs, but if you can time this right, you can cleanse the HP burn, get the continuous heal to get that additional heal out, and then prevent having a buff for when he does his A3 ability. So overall, those are the ones I did want to mention. There's not many bomb champions out there, unfortunately, so definitely take a look through your account, see if you have anything that you can use that can help you during this. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next boss. Alright guys, so the next boss what we're going to look at is Astronyx the Dark Fae. So on the A1 we have Dark Light Beams, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a leech debuff on each enemy for 2 turns. So right off the bat, this A1 does not seem too bad, but the leech debuff does mean that she will be recovering any type of damage that she does. So right off the bat, you might want to bring a cleanser with you, but we'll have to see about the rest of her kit. On the A2, we have Dark Tendrils, attacks all enemies, steals 1 random buff for each enemy according to the number of magic champions on the enemy team, 1 buff for each magic champion, steals turn meter from each enemy according to the number of force champions on the enemy team, 10% turn meter for each force champion, has a 25% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on each enemy for 1 turn. The chance increases by 25% for each Void champion on the enemy team, and then heals Astronyx by 10% of her max HP for each Spirit champion on the enemy team, and this has a 3-turn cooldown. So right off the bat, I'm going to say the worst ones right here are going to be Force Affinity, because you don't want her stealing the turn meter, because that means she'll take more turns, and you take less turns. And then the Spirit Champion one where she heals herself, because 10% of her max HP sounds like a lot. So I would say definitely avoid using any type of Spirit or Force Champions if possible. Now, with the Void Champions and True Fear, right off the bat, I noticed that they don't say you can't prevent it, so you can use a block debuffs in order to block this ability. So I would go actually that route if possible, to use mainly Void Champions, just because you can do a block debuffs if you have that capability to prevent that True Fear. Now the other one would be magic. Now if you can prevent from using too many buffs, the magic one is neglectable in my opinion, and also depends on the buffs that you bring. So overall I would say maybe Seer might be a good thing, just because like a combination of using Void and magic, because you could use Seer to technically buff strip the boss at this point, but we'll have to see about the rest of her kit. On the A3, we have Fairy Storm. Attack all enemies. All living allies will team up and join this attack. Damage increased by 25% for each living ally. I'm guessing this has to deal with her other abilities, so we'll have to see. On the A4, we have Dark Abduction. Banish 1 enemy champion and spawns a mirror copy of them onto Astronyx's team. Places a fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, and increases Astronyx's dark energy counter by 1. Alright, so this is where they're talking about the Astronyx will be able to steal or banish one of your champions. So from what I heard from the video, their initial video, is when it banishes an enemy champion, you no longer have use of that champion until you destroy the mirror copy. So depending on, you know, how the choices are made, or if it's random, this could be a major blow to your team comp, but we'll have to see. But this does look like it contributes to her A3 when they do a team attack pretty much. So we'll have to see what this dark energy counter is though. But that is going to be on a 4-turn cooldown, so decently long cooldown depending on how quick she is. On the A5, we have Fae Mirror, which is going to be her passive. Places a perfect veil buff on Astronyx the Dark Fae for 3 turns and spawns mirror copies of all enemies on Astronyx's team at the start of the battle. So right off the bat, she's going to go into perfect veil, so she's not going to be able to get directly hit, and she's going to summon a copy of your team. So this is going to be a very interesting scenario depending on, you know, who goes first, because not sure, you know, when they talk about spawning mirror copies, if it's going to copy your exact stats or give them different stats. The next effect is going to be summons mirror copies of all enemies onto Astronyx's team every time her dark energy counter reaches 5, which is from her A4. So pretty much she has to use her A4, which banishes 1 enemy from your team and spawns the mirror copy, up to 5 times before she summons a full-fledged team, which makes sense, right, because she's taking 1 enemy at a time. And then next is also places a perfect veil buff on Astronyx for 3 turns every time her dark energy counter reaches 5, which that's going to be something that just happens. It's going to reach 5, drop back down, reach 5, drop back down type thing. So overall, right off the bat, when I'm reading this whole fight, it's just going to be a very odd fight, right? Because mainly it looks like you're going to be fighting your own team that you set up, which means you need to be careful. Now, depending on how the AI obviously reacts and how these actual quote-unquote mirror copies work, if it copies exact stats, gives different stats and all that type of stuff, it could definitely be a challenging thing. But it looks like you are definitely going to be focusing on killing your own team pretty much, and then damaging the boss, and pretty much repeating that whole process. But like I said, from the A2, I think that's going to be like the major ability that is going to define what you use in this boss fight. I would definitely aim toward using more magic and void champions, as those seem at least preventable. When you look at force champions, that's not something that you really can prevent from stealing turn meter. Same thing with using spirit champions. You don't want Astronyx healing, especially when you are possibly still fighting your own team. So that is the only strategy I can really see. It doesn't seem like there's going to be one specific way to do this type of fight, but definitely an interesting fight. I definitely like the mechanics of this boss. So yeah, definitely let me know if you guys are looking at using any type of specific strategy for this boss. But yeah, guys, that is going to be it for the rest of this video. I just wanted to go over their kits, give you guys kind of a hint. Now, do remember that Raid is going to put out their own video tomorrow and give you hints on how to beat these bosses, so I definitely recommend checking that out. But yeah, down in the comment section below, let me know what you guys think of these bosses. Are they going to be challenging enough for you guys? Do you have the bomb champions to do Bommel the Dreadhorn? But yeah, that's all I want to talk to you guys about, and I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.